Welcome to Chalk Talk, a weekly preview of West Tennessee football featuring the Jackson Sun sports team here on JacksonSun.com.
Hey guys, welcome to the opening edition of the 2014 season for the college version of Chalk Talk here on JacksonSun.com. I am Jackson Sun sports editor Brandon Shields. He is Jackson Sun's college sports beat writer Craig Thomas. Sorry, it's been a while since we've done this, so I forgot your name.
No worries.
And but Craig, you've got probably your longest trip of the year to start off with, and it's going to should be something fun for you as UTM goes to Kentucky to start off the season.
Yeah, it's a definitely interesting start when you play against an FBS school, a team that's going to have a lot of really good athletes. Kentucky's recruited well the last couple of years and gotten a lot of the top players from that state and from Ohio. So this is going to be a real challenge for UT Martin. I mean, obviously, the first game is always sort of interesting because you don't know how things are going to, how personnel is going to be used. And I think Jason Simpson's going to kind of experiment a little bit. And I think this kind of game gives you the opportunity to do that. A few years ago, they started with an OVC team, and you just can't lose a game like that.
Right.
With Kentucky, you obviously want to play your best, but there's no real major consequence for losing a game like that. It's more about, I think, playing your best and learning and kind of seeing who handles it when there's 60,000 people in the stands and the guy across from you is maybe a little bit bigger and faster than you are, and that can kind of give you a sense of who's going to be ready for OVC play down the road.
And also the program gets a major paycheck from that.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no doubt that is the biggest factor in this whole thing happening.
Julio Freire is going to be able to make it rain. All right, Memphis will be hosting a OVC opponent this week from UTM's conference as Austin Peay, with a lot of local players on their team, goes down I-40 and plays the Tigers.
Yeah, and a very interesting season for Memphis. Obviously, last couple of years they've really just been kind of trying to restabilize everything, get the program back kind of on the right direction. I think if you ask most people around the program, they'd say that that's happened. I think everybody was a little bit discouraged by the way last season ended because they had 2 weeks where they just almost really didn't show up. But I think overall you have to acknowledge that the trajectory of the program looks a lot better. And I think, this is a pretty easy way to start the season. I mean, Austin Peay, you're talking about, easily the least experienced and frankly least successful program in the OVC in the last few years.
Right.
And they got a ton of new players, and they're just really, there's not going to really be any individual battles where Austin Peay, should really be that competitive. Memphis has a lot of people back, so I think if you're a Tiger fan, you have to be really excited at the fact that you've not only got your starting quarterback returning as a sophomore after plenty of experience, but you've got your top 5 receivers from last year back on the team. You got your running back, a 6th year of eligibility. Basically, at each level of your defense, you've got your main guy back as well. So I mean, really, in my opinion, there's not really any excuses for Memphis to not make some major growth this year. And I think that starts with a clean, just solid performance here in the first week.
Well, let me ask you this before we get to the final game. A couple of years ago, UTM went to Memphis, got a win. FCS over FBS. Do you see any chance at all for either one of these games to end up with the FCS school on top?
I don't see any chance for Austin Peay to beat Memphis. I mean, Austin Peay has really not won any OVC games unless, they didn't win any last year.
Right.
They've only won maybe one in the last couple of years, and they've not been competitive in many of those. They, as a program, are nowhere near where that UTM team was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
UTM and Kentucky seems to me, just my opinion, very, very unlikely. I mean, I know people look at Kentucky as kind of one of the almost maybe a laughing stock in the SEC. They haven't been competitive, and everybody kind of knows that. They were 2-10 last year. But this, on the flip side, as a Kentucky team, this should be very motivated for the first week. I mean, if they're going to improve on that win total, they got to get a win in this game, and they know it. And I think that if there's any sense of pride at all, you have to make sure you get above 2 wins this year. And I think Kentucky's going to be very ready for UT Martin. I don't see any case where they overlook them or anything like that. And unfortunately for the Skyhawks, there's just not enough returning experience. You don't have, at least that we know of too many players that are just going to be able to match up with the guy across from them. In the last couple of years, UTM's had some sort of D1 transfer, some guy that's NFL bound,
right?
A Jeremy Butler, a Quentin Sims, a Montori Hughes, that's just a stud at the FCS level, and it's going to really, really show out against a team like that. Now, that's not to say UTM doesn't have a guy like that, but we just don't know about it yet. They've got a couple quarterbacks that they're going to try out, but this is not the most ready offense that UTM's had in the past. I mean, that's just the way it is, and so I think that's going to be a real challenge. I think UTM, if they play defense the way they're capable of, can keep Kentucky from scoring just a ton of points. But I envision some issues for the Skyhawks offensively against a Kentucky defense that I think is going to seem really, really fast.
Yeah. Kentucky may be a bad team in the SEC, but they are still a team in the SEC. So that's
Yeah, I mean,
the Jacksonville Jaguars are a bad NFL team, but they're in the NFL.
When you look at the number of 3, 4, and 5-star players that Kentucky's going to have, I mean, it's a really difficult matchup, and I think it's really just an opportunity for UTM. That's the way you have to look at it. See how well you can play against a group like that, and then come back and use that to get some wins in OVC play.
All right, one more game on the weekend. Bethel has a fairly long road trip. It's probably actually a plane ride up to Iowa to play William Penn.
They do, and this is a game that last year was the NAIA game of the week. Everyone thought this would be like kind of the game to look at. A couple of ranked teams playing in McKenzie, and it was a disaster. It could not have gone much worse for Bethel, losing 34-8. William Penn, I'll use a cliche, ran the ball down their throats. They ran it, I think, 73 times, and for about 4 or 5 yards a carry, and it seemed like just about, they didn't really break off any long ones. It was just running the ball 4 or 5 yards a time, 73 times. So they're just getting first down after first down after first down.
Breaking their will.
Yeah, and it did, and it was a very discouraging game for Bethel. And I think it's kind of I wrote about this a little earlier. It's kind of a convenient look to see how much progress Bethel's made, because you have to figure William Penn, unless there's been some major changes, they're not going to go off of that game plan too much. They're going to run the ball, and we'll see how much better Bethel's defense is equipped to handle that sort of thing. The other thing I think we're going to find out, how ready is Bethel's offense to be better. Kerry Sellers is the starter. There's some new guys that are going to be getting involved in that offense. There has to be better communication between quarterback and receiver than there was last year. It just didn't work for 12, for the 11 games of the year. So, how much running game can Bethel get? How long can they keep the ball, keep possession, and keep their defense off the field? I mean, that doesn't guarantee a win, but it guarantees a more competitive game. And I think that really there's no excuse for Bethel to not be at least ready to show that they can do that. They've talked about it all summer. I know that they don't want to talk about a 2-9 season anymore, but this is a game where even if you don't win, you have to show some competitiveness, because there's some good teams in that conference they play in, and they were nowhere near ready at that point last year. They got to be ready this year. They're going to have another rough year.
All right, well, like we said earlier, Craig will be at the Kentucky game, or at the UTM game in Kentucky. We'll have Josh Lemons down in Memphis covering that game against Austin Peay, and we'll have a report from Iowa as well, see how Bethel does. Lane is off this week. They'll start their season next week.
That's right, and they'll be at home at Lane Field September 6th against Benedict.
All right, so Craig, safe travels. You follow him on Twitter at JSRiderCraig for updates and constant updates from Lexington, and be sure to follow us and like us on Jackson Sun Sports, the page on Facebook, and good luck to your favorite team this week.